Part 3, The Temple. The next morning, Xiao Zhan carefully crept into the living room. He was gone. Well, that settled that. He went into the kitchen to make a cup of coffee, feeling relieved. Crisis averted. Time to focus on a new script. Half an hour later, Lan Wangji wandered in from the garden. Xiao Zhan cursed under his breath. I didn't want to leave without saying goodbye, and I was hoping you could tell me what direction Gusu is. Xiao Zhan shook his head and shrugged. Lan Wangji rattled off dozens of towns and villages. Xiao Zhan just shook his head. Lan Wangji pulled out an impressive-looking money bag, placed a piece of silver on the table, and said, "Then I will head for the temple and ask the monks for directions. Thank you for your hospitality." Lan Wangji bowed to him and walked out the front door. Xiao Zhan stared at the piece of silver. It looked real. He pulled out his phone and searched for a nearby temple. There was one 30 miles due east. This was it. The guy had blundered. He had him. He ran out the door. Hey. Lan Wangji turned yes. Xiao Zhan ran up to him. How did you know there was a temple there? I heard them ring the morning bells. This guy was so good. There was no way he heard a bell 30 miles away, but the response couldn't be disputed. There was no way to prove it either way. I must know who he really is and what he's up to, Xiao Zhan thought. He had to break at some point. No one could stay in character for days. I'll take you there, Xiao Zhan offered. Thank you, but it would be faster to go on foot than horseback or carriage, Lan Wangji said. My carriage is very, very fast. I could get you there in an hour. That is very impressive. Thank you, Lan Wangji started walking back toward the house. Just need to lock up, Xiao Zhan said. Lan Wangji nodded and followed him back into the house. Xiao Zhan quickly checked all the doors and windows, then gestured to Lan Wangji to follow him. Get in, he gestured to the passenger seat of his sports car. It's unlocked. Lan Wangji stared at the side of the car. I apologize, but there's no opening to get in. Princess, Xiao Zhan muttered under his breath. He walked over to Lan Wangji's side of the car and showed him how to open the door. Ah, thank you. Seatbelt. What? Xiao Zhan showed him how to pull out the seatbelt and latch it. Then he got into the driver's seat and turned the ignition key. Lan Wangji reacted the way he had reacted to the flushing toilet, but he was strapped in, and Xiao Zhan quickly maneuvered the car onto the road, and they took off. It is indeed very fast, Lan Wangji said. Xiao Zhan looked at him and grinned. Then he pushed the car into a higher gear so he could go faster. No better way to out someone than to scare them, and this was a perfectly legitimate way to do it. By the time they got to the temple parking lot, Lan Wangji was looking worse than he had the day before when Xiao Zhan first saw him. But when they got to the temple gate, he suddenly seemed at ease, until he was told he couldn't bring his sword into the temple. Xiao Zhan grinned and waited with glee. But Lan Wangji calmly asked to speak with an elder. The young initiate eyed the sword and decided to comply with the request. 20 minutes later, a middle-aged monk appeared. The initiate pointed at Lan Wangji. The monk drew closer and bowed to Lan Wangji. I apologize, Grand Master. It has been many years since we had a Grand Master cultivator visit us. You are welcome to enter with your sword. Was this guy in on the hoax? Xiao Zhan wondered. How do you know he's a Grand Master cultivator? He asked. His aura, the monk replied. Only a Grand Master cultivator could have an aura like that. This really is like a drama, Xiao Zhan thought. These guys were so slick. They had answers for everything. How deep would this hoax go? Was he in real danger? So far, Lan Wangji had done nothing to threaten him. He followed them into the temple. In dramas, exciting things usually happen in temples. The monk suddenly stopped and looked at Lan Wangji. How did you get here, Grand Master? In my car, Xiao Zhan replied. Lan Wangji gave Xiao Zhan a sideways glance that made Xiao Zhan seriously question his safety. That's not what he was asking. You're being rude. This younger generation, the monk said, shaking his head. They really know nothing. I see, Lan Wangji said. How I got here is one of the questions I was hoping to get answered here. It's beyond my knowledge, the monk said. but there is someone here who might be able to help you." They bowed to each other, and the monk set off again with Lan Wangji and Xiao Zhan following. They went to the innermost part of the temple, where an extremely old monk, who looked to Xiao Zhan to be well over 100 years old, sat.